Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun, Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. It is also great to be with you that are listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. It was awesome to see so many people at Ag in Motion this week. So many of the audience came up, said hello, talked about how the show impacts them and helps them out in their farm business. Also, the broader discussion of RealAgriculture.com. Greatly appreciate all those interactions. It was fantastic. Pretty good weather this week in just outside of Saskatoon. We had two great shows with Invigor and with AGI, and there's a lot of the videos of me and that Earl E. Rooster are. I've had some pretty interesting comments from some of you in DM. So we had a lot of fun as well, not just informative. We can have fun around here as well. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, because we have a lot to talk about. We got a Real Ag Issues panel. Tyler McCann from CAPI, Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture. We got a lot of issues to talk about. There was I guess a quieter version of the FPT meeting and the new one's not going to be in September, or I guess the next one. This was just kind of a short little get together. We also had a CFA roundtable discussion in Winnipeg to replace that canceled FPT meeting. And what else did we have? Well, we had Ag in Motion, and we got a big announcement. Huge announcement, actually. Looking forward to it. So you got to stay tuned to segment 3 today, where we will unveil that big announcement. Very exciting stuff happening over here at Real Agriculture. Now, on the feedback side, if you have any feedback, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Or you are always more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback. Did I already say that one? I think I already did. 855-776-6147. Well, if I did, you got it again. And also reach out to Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. Interact with us on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube. And I might as well throw in as well our Real Agriculture newsletters, realagriculture.com/subscribe. Okay. All of that, the official business is out of the way. When we come back, we got a beef market update with Ann Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange, right after this.
The new Brandt XT grain cart delivers unmatched forward auger reach, side auger reach, and discharge spout clearance for easy positioning, with sight lines that allow you to actually see what you're doing while you're doing it, saving you time with each load and getting you back to the combine sooner. They say hindsight is 20/20. We say seeing what's in front of you is better. Lead the field with the new XT grain cart from Brandt.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. It's time for the beef market update with Ann Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Ann, how are we doing?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Good to be with you as well. You know, FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and join thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable hybrid fall rise seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave with FP Genetics. Okay, and the market on cattle is, you and I were texting earlier this week. It is fascinating. What happened with cash prices this week?
Well, this week was kind of steady, but we didn't talk last week. And last week we had a $5 jump in the southern trade in Texas and Kansas. So, you know, to hold markets steady with those levels from last week is just absolutely amazing, especially now where we flipped and we're into the back half of July. So in the South, Texas and Kansas, we traded anywhere from steady to $2 higher, 230 to 231 live. So again, following last week's big move. And then in the North, we continue to see that premium market, 240 live in Nebraska, 376 to 380 delivered dress. So just very strong markets. Every time the market seems to want to falter and back off. And we've still got this big premium still cash over futures that we've been running with all year long, really. So that just continues to be amazing. We're watching this cutout very closely, which is that wholesale price, and it's kind of doing more of the seasonal thing. This week, the choice cutout did lose $11 a hundred. Again, we're coming off some extreme highs. We're still well above where we were last year, but it closed last night at 373, and the select's about $19 a hundred back of that. So, you know, kind of the signals are there that cash could be running out of some steam, especially as these wholesale markets come down. Packer margins are going to go slip back into the red, and they'll likely try to buy cattle cheaper. But we've said that lots over the last few weeks, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So, pretty crazy.
What about some of the trade issues between the U.S. and Brazil right now? I continue to hear a lot in some of the mainstream news in terms of some of the concerns about Brazilian trim being an important import into the U.S. to do a bit of a backfill on some of the supply.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You know, August the 1st isn't that far away, so that's kind of the date. That is the date that President Trump has talked about this 50% tariff on Brazil. So why I think we're hearing a lot about it, first of all, in terms of beef into the U.S., Brazil is the second largest market after China. So the U.S. is Brazil's second largest market after China, and it's about 23% of U.S. beef imports. So, you know, the numbers are fairly substantial, so that's why we're hearing about it. Most of the imports of beef into the U.S. from all countries, other than Canada, would be of lean trim. And that's, of course, to blend off with domestic product to make ground beef, hamburgers, those kinds of things. So that's largely what beef imports are used for. So to the end of May, beef imports from Brazil to the U.S. were double last year's price. And, of course, North American prices have been very strong, both Canada and the U.S., on all cuts, beef, you know, and meats, middle meats, all the rest of it. So it's been a very attractive market for imports. And that's why we're seeing more and more come into Canada and the U.S. So supplies are tight. Supplies of lean trim are tight. You know, look at our non-fed production, which is our cow and bull production. In Canada, we're running down on both. U.S. is down. So U.S. imports are up 33% to the end of May, and Canada we're up 20% to the end of June. So we've been bringing a lot of product in. So if all of a sudden you're going to throw, you know, a 50% tariff on something, you know, we're going to see some changes, whether it's more product come from Australia, Uruguay, New Zealand. So, I mean, there will be shifts because at that kind of level, it certainly we'll see some impacts.
Yeah, let's bring it back home. What are some of the price activity here in Canada?
Well, we had a pretty good market, but Canadian feedlots are very current, especially here in Western Canada. So I think they're feeling like they don't really have to sell at steady money, especially with the wide basis we've got. So there were bids this week of $4.95 to $5 delivered dressed. I think feedlots are looking for a little bit more than that. We'll see if there's more trade developed today. but steady to better. And just one kind of point on Ontario as well. We did see a $10 jump in the dress price in Ontario this week, up to $5.30 delivered. So that was good news as well.
Yeah, on the trade front, we were just talking about imports and exports. One of the trade pieces of data we wanted to cover was feeder cattle imports into Canada from the U.S.
Yeah, we haven't talked to it for a bit, and you kind of thinking in a market like this, maybe we aren't bringing as many feeder cattle into Canada as we have been. We've talked about this a lot in the last few years, but in May, we had over 31,000 head of feeder cattle still moving north into Canadian, especially Western Canadian feedlots. Year to date, we're now over 157,000 head. That's up 31%. And our exports in May were only 5,000 head of feeder cattle. So, we're still heavily weighted to the net import position. And again, Shaun, that's just reflecting this tight supply of feeder cattle, U.S., Canada, you name it, and the increasing supply or the increasing pen space capacity that we're seeing as feedlots continue to, especially in Western Canada, do some expansion here and there in terms of overall capacity. So an interesting dynamic for sure. Yeah,
talked to lots of different producers at Ag in Motion this week. And, when we talk about the beef sector, I think it's it's not exactly, this isn't a profound statement. There's a lot of risk here right now. It feels like it's high stakes.
It is. Margins have been good, looking in the rearview mirror. And again, that's what's driving a lot of what's going on right now. So it's always moving parts, but again, a very exciting time to be in the business.
Yeah, right now there's a lot of talk about Canada and the U.S. trying to come up with some sort of a trade agreement by August 1st. Now, President Trump has talked about these increased tariffs are on non-USMCA CUSMA goods. But I think there's some concern in the cattle sector, for example, that, if some of this floats into things that are USMCA compliant, boy, the beef industry would have some problems.
Yeah. So things change in a hurry in that kind of case. So, yeah, as we've said many, many times, the sooner the better. Some certainty and some knowns around this whole trade negotiations is going to be good because we're running on a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. Talked to a lot of crop producers this week. They're feeling a lot better about the crops, compared to a month ago. Probably same for, we're into middle of July. So the grass is kind of made for the most part. You can tell me otherwise, but we'll take it.
It is. But at the same time, moisture is moisture in terms of what happens going into the fall and next year. So we'll take what's coming right now. And it's been wet for sure. It slows down the haying process, but that's okay. We'll still take the moisture.
Yeah, the other thing that I think has feed yards with a little bit of feeling, I don't know, optimism, whatever, but positive about is the fact there's some softness to the feed grains.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's kind of broad case, whether you're talking about in the U.S. or in Canada, but we are looking at lower levels or the expectations of lower price levels as we head into new crop this fall and winter for feeding these calves, these expensive calves.
Yeah, what about the exchange rate?
Well, just watching that, just seems to want to bounce around that 73-cent area, both sides. Every time you feel like there's some more strength coming, then you get some news that it, some kind of trade actions happen somewhere that it backs off again. So, but just it's hanging around 73. Folks are still thinking, many are still thinking some more strength to it, but it hasn't, changed a whole bunch in the first quarter or the first half of this year.
Well, and it was great to see you last week at the Calgary Stampede. It was great to catch up with yourself and Barry. Have yourself a great weekend.
Great. You too. Thanks, Shaun.
Okay, that is Ann Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. When we come back, we've got the RealAg Issues panel, and we're going to lead off with a big announcement that we're making here today on the show. Join us when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
At Proven Seed, we know that farming in Western Canada doesn't just teach us, it shapes us. Here we face challenges with resilience, innovation, and grit born from decades of experience. We battle the conditions again and again because growing crops here isn't just what we do. It's who we are. We're raised to adapt just like you, with varieties grown specifically for your local conditions. Visit provenseed.ca/raised to adapt to hear our story.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Vatterstad air seeders and tillage products are built for farmers and engineered for results. See these products and other innovative solutions at Vatterstad.com. Saw Vatterstad at Ag in Motion this week. Some great, cool technologies and innovations definitely happening there for sure. Let's get to the RealAg issues panel. Before we get to this, I've been promoting this big announcement. We'll get to that in a second. Up first, Lyndsey Smith, coming out of Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, how are we doing?
You know what? Quite well. The weather finally broke. So everyone can be tired and me complaining, etc. Don't worry, guys. I'm okay. I survived. I made it.
I'm complaining it's too cold. You're complaining it's too hot. We're having a hard time finding the middle.
It's lovely now. The sun is shining. It's not 170,000 degrees and humid as heck. It's quite lovely. There will be a lot of hay that goes down this weekend because we finally have some dry weather. To get it dried. So yeah, sounds like everybody's going to be knocking everything down this weekend.
Also joining us, Kelvin Heppner, coming out of Altona, Manitoba, the chicken man himself. How are we doing today, Kelvin?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I had some issues in the barn yesterday, so still working on solving those, but still priority to be on the radio show here and talk about all the different things that have happened this week, because certainly a lot of different things to talk about.
Okay.
Talking about disagreement where two people can't agree on whether it's hot or cold, that's, I think, kind of a snapshot of the world right now in many ways where we can't agree.
On anything?
On anything, yeah.
Well, just so you know, Lindsay's wrong.
That's fine.
I'm still searching for summer. Like, yeah. It was chilly this week, but you know what? Honestly, Wednesday at Ag in Motion was maybe the best, most ideal outdoor farm show weather. Like, it was 25, no wind. It was really nice. So there. And that Lyndsey thinks like 25 at the top on the thermometer.
That's like my top end.
That's your top end.
Like,
what are you doing here? You should be like in like Finland.
I am. I'm well adapted to northern climates. Yeah, 25 is like, that's a beach day. Like, I should be at a beach. So if it's like for regular stuff, like 22, 23 is lots. I don't need more than that. Yeah.
Well, the man that said he wore a sweater yesterday and he enjoyed it is Tyler McCann, managing director at CAPI, based out of Quebec. Hey, how are you doing today, Tyler?
I'm doing quite well. Shaun, yeah, it was, a couple of hot days, but took a turn last night. Got some bit of a sprinkle out walking pasture and was happy I had a sweater on. I almost wished I'd had a coat too, but don't need that today. Sun shining here in Western Quebec.
It's basically perfect.
No, like it's like I was watching the British Open, the highlights last night, and Rory McIlroy was wearing like a sweater with a shirt underneath, and he was still doing like the like this, and it was just like it is the middle of July.
So
come on.
Anyway.
Shaun, I'm just looking forward. Kelvin was talking about disagreement. I think he set the stage for hopefully a lively discussion today on the show. So,
there's a few things that could get a little spicy today.
If Kelvin wants spice, we'll make sure and give the listener some spice.
Yeah. Poor Kelvin.
He's going to throw his headset and walk away.
No, there's some examples. I'm already thinking of some examples of the opposite, where groups are coming together and there's unity happening, consensus happening. We can talk about that too.
On the surface or behind the scenes?
Both.
Okay.
maybe more on the surface than behind the scenes in some of these cases. I don't know.
We'll see.
I don't think Canadian agriculture likes unity, so we'll have to do our part to blow that up today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain people and parts of it, I'd agree with you, Tyler.
You know us, divisive real agriculture. Okay, let's get to the announcement. Before we get to some of the disagreement, there is something we agree on, and the fact is, what we agree on is that Real Agriculture and CAPI should be working very closely together. And so we are very pleased, and I'm super pumped. Because today we're announcing that Real Agriculture and CAPI have crafted a very much a strategic partnership, Tyler, and we're going to be seeing a lot more CAPI content at RealAgriculture.com and on this show.
Yeah, and Shaun, we're really excited about this. I mean, I think one of the things that I've come to appreciate over the years is that people in think tanks, in associations, in governments can talk about policy all that they want, but really, it's the people that feel policy every day, the farmers, food processors, everybody else involved with it, that need to understand what's going on. I've appreciated the platform that you provide to talk about these issues on a regular basis, and I'm excited to be able to do more of that because we're in a really different world today. I think that policy environment is changing, and farmers need to understand what's happening, why, and hopefully we can work together to give them a bit of a broader perspective on the issues that they're facing.
Yeah, so we're going to be monthly webinars on ag policy issues. CAPI's also, we got some ag policy briefs or like a multi-page deeper dive into a specific topic. And we also have some opinion columns as well from Tyler and stakeholders within the CAPI system. So, and on top of that, also we're working on a policy e-newsletter that people will be able to sign up for as well. So Tyler, no matter how you like to consume your ag policy content, because this is one of the most popular episodes of the show all week. I heard from people throughout the week at Ag in Motion this week, love the Friday panel. And so let's try to find other ways to bring that content to people. And we're super excited at Real Agriculture because I think whether we use the word, we're going to deepen the discussion, we're going to elevate the discussion, we're going to expand on the discussion, whatever that word is that we use to describe it, I think more discussion around ag policy issues are absolutely critical to move decisions forward and make for a better Canadian agricultural landscape.
And I think for us, it's really about kind of the impact, right? So the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, kind of providing research perspectives, insights into kind of what's going on, only has an impact if people hear it, right? And that is something that I think when you talk about all of those different ways that we'll be producing content together, it is about helping kind of reaching people where they are, right? And I don't want somebody to have to feel like they need to read a 100-page research report. We tend not to put those out anymore. But like this is about providing digestible content, again, in whatever kind of format people want so that they can be better informed, better understand the world that we're in.
Great stuff. Kelvin, any?
Oh, I'm excited. Our listeners will know I really love the policy discussion and looking forward to really having a lot more of it now with CAPI and Real Agriculture working together in this partnership. Looking forward to the discussions, the policy briefs, the written commentary, the webinars, all of the stuff that we plan to deliver here.
Yeah, Lyndsey, I was trying to find like a sports partner so I could just talk sports daily, but this was like the next best thing.
It really is the next best thing, and maybe even better, to be honest.
I think better. In retrospect, I think better.
This actually works out better. Yeah. But I am. And, to Tyler's point of meeting people where they are, that is something that within Real Agriculture, I think has come up for the last several years as we would get together and talk strategically about, what do farmers want? What do industry members want? And where do they go for their information? Where are they already? And so that has been something that Real Agriculture has definitely been working on, behind the scenes and continually improving on, continually working on. And so it does really complement what we're doing, as far as our reach already, but really adds a level of depth and discussion, that I'm looking forward to and really appreciate from Tyler and the CAPI team. So, super excited about this and looking forward to it. And, Tyler, you may not know this, but I really wanted webinars. And
she did.
Here we go. Monthly webinars. I'm so excited.
She's a secret webinar lover.
I am. You guys.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there. Again, I also get lots of feedback about when I am here on the show, but I also get a lot of feedback on people that like the webinars, They're up on the YouTube channel. People can watch them after. And one thing in all of that, what we try and do, and I think it's really important for people to understand this, is that especially in this world that we're in, there is no right answer to what we should be doing. But what there are consequences and pros and cons and different factors. And hopefully what people see from the content that we produce is not this is the solution, but here's the context that we're in. Here are the different factors people should be considering. And here are options and some of the pros or cons from it. I think sometimes we get too much caught in a trap where we all need to agree what the one perfect solution is. But one thing I've learned from 20 years in the ag policy politics space is there is definitely no such thing as a perfect solution. What there are decisions that need to be made, and hopefully we'll help people make more informed decisions.
Well, I hear from the people that disagree with me all the time. Go ahead, Kelvin.
And going back to what we were saying before, exactly, there's a lot of disagreement in the world right now and not listening to the other side. And that's where I think it's exciting to have new forums and new places where you can hear a various mix of opinions and the pros and cons and the trade-offs and try to come together to build that consensus, figure out what is the best solution, not a perfect solution, like Tyler just said. And that's where, sure, a sports partner, Shaun, would have been fun, but I think these are real important decisions because, like Tyler said, things are changing quickly right now on the policy front, and these things have a real world impact on not just people farming, not just people working in agriculture, but all Canadians, all North Americans.
Okay, I'll just have to wait for College Game Day to call. Reese Davis will retire at some point, and ESPN will call. They will call eventually. But we're very excited. Stay tuned for more information, and of course, you can find all of this at RealAgriculture.com. That's enough of the kumbaya. We got some big divisive issues to talk about when we come back. Danielle Smith maybe pulling Alberta out of supply management, and what is the Canadian Pork Council doing? Rejoining the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. We'll talk about all that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And we're back here on RealAg Radio. Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution, everybody. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Find out more by going to genesisfertilizers.com. And we'll have, on Monday's show, Lyndsey's hosting, but we're going to have the new CEO of Genesis Fertilizers, Derek Penner, will be on the show to talk about him sliding into that role and what it means for the future of that project as they try to continue to raise capital. So that'll be on Monday's show, everybody. So you want to hear about that, tune in then. Okay, interesting. Tyler, you shared a link, which was Premier Smith of Alberta is talking about maybe Alberta doesn't need to be a part of supply management. Interesting thoughts. Seems like there's probably more barriers to that than maybe first meets the eye to start with.
So if Alberta wants out, there isn't necessarily a huge amount of barriers. The way that these agreements, the system effectively works is a series of FPT agreements, or effectively really provincial agreements. It's the provinces that hold a lot of those power. And at the end of the day, a province can provide notice and get out of the system, but getting out of the system is not a means and an ends of itself. It has happened before. It hasn't been used as a negotiating tactic amongst provincial marketing boards in the past. We haven't seen that as much recently. But I think there's a big question around why. What would you want to achieve? The Premier was talking about potential new export opportunities. I mean, I think that most people in the dairy industry in Alberta would be pretty skeptical about what that would look like and how that would play out. At the end of the day, I think as often as we've seen lately with the Alberta Premier, unfortunately, is that these are comments that are made to elicit a reaction and to try and drive debate about Alberta's place in the country. I wish that there was more of a focus on the constructive issues actually facing people. I'm not sure this is very helpful in the moment that we're in.
What I'm curious about is, how is there an opportunity for exports, though, Kelvin? Because, so one, there would be exports out of Alberta into the other provinces. That's one export potential hiccup or some, a bit of an entanglement. But you also just can't start exporting out of the province into, like, say, the United States, which is that's not just doable either. So where the export, like, how is there an export opportunity here?
Well, there would be export. Why wouldn't you be able to export into the U.S. if they expanded production?
Well, because they would see it as Canadian production going south, and that would create broader trade issues between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. That could potentially happen, but off the hop, it may not necessarily. There are all kinds of ways of navigating that, and there's to what Tyler said. I think Premier Smith was saying something provocative here at a town hall in Red Deer, not necessarily something that she's seriously considering doing, and she even admitted that maybe they should look at it just to stick a finger in the eye of Quebec. So it shows you motivation may not be much more than political there. Certainly there would be a ton of all the dairy, chicken and egg producers, turkey producers in Alberta who hold quota and have loans against that quota or have borrowed to buy that quota certainly would have a lot to say too if their premier is seriously considering this as well.
Lyndsey, what do you think would be the ripple effect across Canadian dairy and poultry markets if Alberta left supply management?
So that's an interesting one. I think more on I think this is really just probably deflection, frankly, or trying to get on the audience's good side, because I've certainly been, I've heard some of the audio from some of these town meetings, and she's not always super popular when she has to sort of take, the middle ground or explain how things actually work or anything like that. So I could see it being just a political ploy for sure. At the same time, when I think about sort of the actual logistics of these things, et cetera, like one of the advantages potentially of the supply management system is that the provinces, the western provinces at least, like product does get pulled sort of one direction or the other based on need, based on demand, based on supply. So when you have things like potentially avian influenza or those sorts of things, like the system tries to account for that by pulling within these provinces. And so to have one, not just one province, but like in the middle of that, not be a part of it would create a lot of headaches within that system and would really disrupt a lot of the efficiency of some of that. And it's not an indictment of, whether you're pro or anti supply management. The system as it runs, I mean, it does try to make up for some of these differences or shortfalls in production or increased demand in other areas by shifting things west or shifting things east, usually west into BC.
Alberta did leave on the chicken side of things for a few years in the 2010s, I believe it was. And it was only a few years later that they came back and said, "Hey, can we come back in the tent?" kind of thing. So, and Tyler alluded to that. Some of that was for internal negotiation's sake when it comes to allocation of production quota across the country between the provinces. For example, Lyndsey, though, to what you're talking about, the Western Milk Pool is the four Western provinces work together in terms of milk production and managing production and accounting for those differences across the provinces. They've just built a massive processing facility in Alberta, and what happens to that processing facility if all of a sudden that province would take this type of measure? That would be an example of a practical complication there.
It's pretty fascinating. I think if anything, it really does kind of poke the bear on this issue.
Right, but again, it's always fun to poke the bear. I've been known to try and poke the bear from time to time, but
no, really,
we're facing some serious issues as a country, Shaun, and I'm not sure like poking the bear just for giggles is the right thing to do at the moment. And I think what it does is distract from kind of other more serious issues, even about supply management. For example, we could have led with the fact that Canada and New Zealand have reached an agreement on some of New Zealand's complaints about how Canada's administering its TRQ. I think it shows that as much as we talk about how supply management is a barrier from a trade perspective, we can have meaningful trade relationships with our partners while still respecting the system. And as much as everyone likes to think that the Americans want to tear supply management down, I think actually what the Americans want is Canada to also address its TRQ administrations from the last trade deal that we negotiated. And I think that that's the likely outcome today of a renegotiated agreement between Canada and the United States.
That's not that's like an official request. That's what the U.S. dairy groups have been saying. That's not a think thing. It's not, you're not speculating. Right. That's pretty much known to be what the ask is.
Right. But a lot of people in Canada seem to think that we need to do other more radical things. And that's just not, those asks aren't based in reality. We can potentially get to a deal where we have offered no new access to the Americans. We're just making sure that we live up to the access that we have. So again, I think we all like to get caught up in kind of the craziness of supply management, but at the end of the day, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Also, the benefits of being outside of it are not as good as people make it out to be. It is what it is, and we just need to work within it. We shouldn't poke the bear.
Said for a long time, when it comes to dairy, you either support on the front end or you support on the back end. Canada supports on the front end with our supply management system. Americans and other countries support on the back end with subsidies and payments. Lyndsey, what do you make of the Canadian Pork Council rejoining the CFA?
Would I love to be in on those talks? Just to hear how things go. This is related, of course, to supply management. And this is as a complete outsider's perspective. I really do have a hard time trying to figure out how the leadership at CFA plans to navigate. How do you simultaneously, support what pork producers and pork processors, like that entire value chain? How do you support that and obviously support supply management so publicly and on policy? There's a reason that some of these groups have not been members. And I know that CFA often tries to sort of walk that line of supporting farmers and trying to be that, that united voice of all sectors, et cetera. But let's face it, there are some significant issues between some of our sectors that sort of fly in the face of each other when it comes to trade and when it comes to some of our commodities. So, awesome. I would love to be at that table to have some of those conversations, just to listen. I would just get my popcorn and enjoy.
I reached out to some of the farm groups that aren't into a CFA. Were they considering? There wasn't a lot of official comments on the record in that regard that were provided back to me. But Kelvin, I do question. Like I get the idea. Like on the surface, CPC is saying we need to be at the table. We want to be a part of the process. But I do have to question, what do you actually think you're going to get out of this? Because you're not moving the needle in terms of some of the opinions about supply management at that board table, are you?
Well, you're at least adding a voice for trade within the CFA board table. There is some of the provincial farm groups are more active proponents for free trade and less focused on supply management. But Pork Council certainly brings a large voice on that front, and that's one of the reasons. If people want to listen to the interview with Renee Roy, the chair of the Canadian Pork Council, it's up on Real Agriculture and in our podcast feed. I think, though, trade is just a small part of what the Canadian Federation of Agriculture is about. They are about all aspects of Canadian agriculture. And so that's where I think on the red tape reduction, the investment in infrastructure, lobbying, the focus when we talk about getting new products into the Canadian market, whether it's on the animal health front or that type of thing. There's a lot of places there where I think the Pork Council Board sees opportunity to work with CFA and extend their interests because they are aligned. They've worked, and this is a thing, Canadian Federation of Agriculture has worked with the Pork Council quite a bit over the last number of years on other files other than trade. Same with some of the other members of the commodity groups that are more membership with the Canadian Agriculture Agri-Food Trade Alliance, or CAFTA. So there are things, again, in agriculture, going back to our earlier segments, where there is unity and we are working in the same direction. And sometimes we like to focus on the things like trade in this example where we're divided.
Well, I'll tell you this. Lyndsey's interested in hearing some of the conversations. Here's the conversation that I'm interested in hearing is the next CAFTA board meeting. That's what I'm interested in, to hear some of the responses from those other membership groups around the table.
Except what we should be focused on is, again, what are the actual outcomes of this, right? And at the end of the day, I don't know, we don't have another Bill 202 that will be divisive coming down the pipes. We will potentially have a dynamic around a renegotiation with the United States, but there is a solution, I think, that's easy for CFA in this case, which is to say, look, on issues that are divisive amongst members, we're not going to comment. I've often thought that should be a more prudent position on trade for CFA to take. Leave that up to the commodity groups that have different interests, even amongst exporters. They're not always united on things, and focus on all of the issues where there is commonality across producers. One of the things often in agriculture is we get caught up amongst the differences, but if you're Finance Canada, you don't probably know the difference between a canola farmer or a dairy farmer. They think about agriculture as agriculture, and agriculture needs to do a better job meeting them on the terms where they're at. And I think that's something that hopefully this will make easier.
That's actually one thing that Renee Roy talks about in that interview, where when you meet with government departments in agriculture, sure, the bureaucrats in the agriculture department might understand the politics of different farm groups, but when you meet with health or science or different departments, trade, global affairs, then it's important to speak with one voice because of, maybe trade, I shouldn't have added trade to that list, but the CFIA or PMRA or some of those, ISET, some of those other bureaucrats working in those departments that aren't as familiar with agriculture.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about it seems like a bit of a controversy has developed in the last 24 hours. It's been exposed that the grain growers of Canada were using TFW applications for a comms role. And MP out of Calgary, Michelle Rempel-Garner, not happy about it. And she's actually doubling down, asking questions. We'll talk about when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius X.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, FB Genetics. They bring new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and join thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable hybrid fall rye seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave with FP Genetics at fpgenetics.ca. Okay, Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI, Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture, and Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture breaking down the biggest issues of the week. Okay, so one of the things that happened on Thursday that, Kelvin, I believe you had shared the link. I don't know what the official word is to use here, but there's a list that's become public about organizations across Canada or companies that have been using the TFW program. There's a lot of scrutiny around TFWs right now, and agriculture is a big user of this program, although both sides of the aisle kind of seem to be posing it sometimes as a bit of the enemy, taking away Canadian jobs in today's political climate. So I guess, Kelvin, what do we know right now? MP Michelle Garner has really thrown a bit of a fire under this. What do we know?
Well, she certainly brought attention to the fact that Grain Growers of Canada had one of these positions. They're on that list of organizations, companies that have sought a TFW position within their workforce. And so that's certainly raised some questions. People are like, why would Grain Growers of Canada need this for a comms role? And so it's something that we're digging into, trying to get the details. We can't say everything that we've heard so far. We're still figuring out how to navigate some of the sensitive stuff around this. And so I'm not going to give a whole lot of detail other than as with a lot of these stories, and I know that this happens a lot when it comes to immigration files and issues, it's not black and white. It's not as simple as it looks, and there's more to the story. There's nuance, there's detail here, and we're still sorting through that. And I think this might be an exception to the norm, and so we need to. I would say take it with a grain of salt when politicians come out with strong accusations. They often like to jump to conclusions for political purposes, and I'm not sure that is relevant, suitable in this case. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll hopefully have more on this in the coming days.
So there's a lot of different ways to use the TFW program, but Lyndsey, we know this: agriculture really needs this program. And right now, similar to the CFR, where the CFR became like the enemy. Meanwhile, there are some components of it, from a biofuel perspective, are very good for agricultural product demand. Everything gets thrown into a bucket, and MP Garner Rempel's tweets kind of, or ex posts kind of showcase how the Conservative Party feels about the program right now.
Well, and I do think I think it's important that we, look at some of these programs critically. I think that's important. I think the TFW program is one that does garner attention, and rightfully so. I think there are aspects of it that changed during the pandemic that maybe haven't been addressed or maybe are in the process of. I think they're probably, as just a policy or program overall, it probably should be updated in some different ways, but it is an incredibly important one for several different aspects of this industry. Is it perfect? No, but it is important, and there are definitely sectors that rely on it very heavily. And just because a program is used and you don't agree with the program doesn't make every instance of using it wrong either. So let's also just park that for a minute. The biofuel sort of parallel is an interesting one, because I think that you can support the need for something, but then also perhaps you have some philosophical differences on some of what a particular policy may encourage, etc. I find sometimes the take on the biofuel side I find very confusing, because realistically, I think that perhaps some people don't fully grasp how big a role policy plays in the entire biofuel industry and what that translates to at a field level. So, if you grow canola, if you grow soybeans, if you grow corn, or if you grow wheat, realistically understanding how not just Canada, obviously the US, how policies around biofuels work or don't work or change or encourage has a huge impact on what ends up the price farmers actually get for some of these crops. So I have a hard time wrapping my head around some of the pushback to it, if you fully understand just how much demand these programs actually end up translating to.
Tyler, before I move on.
Yeah, my experience in government was that the temporary foreign worker program was one of the most divisive issues inside cabinet under the Harper government. Like, these things are not easy. There's always, part of the problem is that there's a difference between governments trying to make policy, set rules and programs that apply across the board, and then these cases that arrive, and we don't know the details of this, but I'm sure that there's a very legitimate reason that explains this. But the question is not, is this the right case or not? The question should be, should you be allowed to hire a communications professional through the temporary foreign worker program?
Period.
And I think if you look at, yeah, that's right, at the end of it, never mind kind of the individual circumstances. And I think if you look at the approach the Australian government takes, they're far more detailed around this kind of employment code is eligible for the program or not, and that is based on across the country, is there demand or shortage of these workers or not? And employment codes kind of come in and out of that program. So at a time when there's a shortage of hairdressers, they will let hairdressers come in. But as soon as kind of the stats show there isn't, that gets cut off, that gets kicked out. And I think that as the government looks to how do we better manage the temporary foreign worker program in Canada, they will have to make changes like that. I think that that's coming. Again, I'm sure there's a very legitimate reason for why Grain Corps of Canada has done that. Not arguing with that, but there's a much bigger question around why is the government running this program the way that they are.
Yeah. So in the US this week, there was lots of talk about, do we need to have immigration reform for agriculture that's a carve out instead of trying to fix some of those issues inside of a broader immigration reform context? And I heard comments from Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley talking about how it'd be great to have a carve out, because anytime it gets mixed into the broader discussion, it just goes goes nowhere. Hey, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney this week, and the two agreed that they're going to strengthen their trade collaboration. They're going to maybe compare notes, compare letters, so to speak, and say, hey, how can we team up here to try to find some sort of deal before the August 1st deadline, Kelvin?
Yeah, those letters were copied and pasted in large sections, so I'm not sure that there was a lot to compare in terms of differences other than the percentage amount. But I think that deadline is looming. Trump's got a lot going on in his world orbit right now, and curious to see how that plays out. We of course have those court cases. The witness, they're going to be hearing from witnesses the day before, 2 days before the August 1st deadline, and in terms of the legality of these IEEPA tariffs, and so a lot of moving parts for negotiators both in Canada and Mexico to weigh right now in terms of navigating whether to try to actually have some sort of an announcement and agreement and let Trump thinks he has won something or accomplished something that he can sell and post about on social media, or whether to continue to rag the puck and slow play this as and leave it to other forces to kind of rein the Trump administration in on some of these trade tactics.
Yeah. I had said on RFD TV this morning that, I think, one of the barriers to putting some of these trade skirmishes, not just this one, but others behind the White House is President Trump wanting to move on. I think that is a fundamental issue that, the White House has to sort out is, I heard Treasury Secretary Bessent say on CNBC earlier this week that, they had a deal with India and the president said no and wanted them to go back to the table. There wasn't enough in it. And so that could be a bit of a moving target. And clearly Canada is trying to sort out how do we avoid this blanket tariff scenario that really, really is at play here for all of these countries as some of the details leak out. Lyndsey, thoughts?
Well,
No, you should go to Kelvin. I don't have anything good to say. I'll be honest.
One nugget that I heard this week was that apparently the reference to CUSMA compliant or USMCA compliant goods was in the initial letter, and Trump stroked it out of the letter to Canada because he didn't want to bring attention to the fact that USMCA goods would still be exempt from the tariff. So. That's the big question here: is whether USMCA compliant goods, are going to remain exempt from that blanket tariff if it takes effect after August 1st. Sorry,
I don't think it really. I think one of the things that should probably concern everybody, and people are thinking about this. It's a year basically now when we would potentially be in some sort of re-talk or renegotiation review of that USMCA CUSMA agreement. Doesn't really give you a lot of confidence on what that could potentially look like a year from now, given what we're trying to sort out here in 2025, Tyler.
I think one of the big questions these days is how is the president going to try and use trade to distract from his issues in the Epstein files? But setting that kind of issue aside, I think at the beginning of the year, there was a difference between how Canada and Mexico were dealing with the United States. I think kind of this commitment of Carney and Sheinbaum to work more closely together is a positive development, and it really is hopefully a sign that we will be taking more of a North American approach to these issues. But at the end of the day, I think that we often, don't appreciate the fact that there is CUSMA compliance still exempted from those tariffs. I think we have to wait and see what that looks like. But Canada is more fortunate than most other countries at this point in time because of the deal that we have. And Trump may not be honoring it fully across the board, but on products that matter to agriculture, the U.S. is still living up to that agreement, and that really is worth a lot for the sector.
We're in a much better position than other countries like, say, Brazil, China, or for sure the European Union. Hey, we are out of time here. We will have a bonus segment. I got some big questions like on some of the stuff that we missed talking about here in the main show, as well as, hey, what if you just let your farm be run by AI for a week? What would be good and what would go tragically bad? We'll talk about that in the bonus. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Kelvin, have yourself a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care, all.
You, Lyndsey, as well.
Talk to you on Monday.
Enjoy the cooler weather, Lyndsey. Enjoy the cooler weather. Tyler, all the best to you.
Yeah, and thanks, Shaun, and look forward to working with you guys more going forward.
Absolutely. Also, the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Chat again next week. Cheers. Okay, we decided this is called the bonus. Lyndsey and I did I think it was last week we decided on that. So, hey, Tyler, you got to run here. You've got other commitments that apparently are more important. We all question what the significance or the details are of that. But what did we miss?
We missed that there was a meeting of federal, provincial, territorial agriculture ministers yesterday. It was supposed to be an in-person meeting. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when they delayed it. They met virtually instead. I don't think anybody really knows what came out of the meeting, but the fact that we missed an FTP Ag ministers meeting says a lot maybe about the state of what we know about that relationship and what they're up to. I think that is one of the most important relationships, the undervalued relationships in agriculture in Canada. I wish we all paid more attention to it. I wish they were a lot more public about what they did, and I wish they did bigger, more important things. And so, I don't know, maybe we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll find out they agreed to something big, but I'm not holding my breath.
Well, Scott Moe invited everybody to be buddies. That came out of that, didn't it?
No, but again, that's a good example where rather than doing what Nova Scotia did and unilaterally reducing its barriers, Saskatchewan's done something else and said, please come join the New West Partnership. Saskatchewan could do what others have done and unilaterally drop their barriers too. We talk about this need to build kind of a stronger, more united Canada. We need our ag ministers to be working together in the same space. And I think just at the end of the day, we're not actually seeing that happen in practice. And I bet there was divisions yesterday on that call.
I'm curious too what the level of ambition was, because this was kind of seen, I think, or framed as kind of a fill-in virtual meeting because of the summer meeting being canceled, and that the real work is going to be done in early September when they're back in Winnipeg. And dates have been set now. They're back in Winnipeg. I believe it's the first or second week of September for the in-person FPT meeting, which I'm not to dash our hopes here, but I'm thinking that the meeting yesterday probably was just about setting things up for that.
And I will say before I have to depart that CAPI had a board meeting yesterday virtually. My understanding is our board meeting was longer than the FTP Ag Minister's call, and I'm not sure that's a great sign about levels of ambition. On that note, thank you very much, everyone, and I will leave you all in Lyndsey, Kelvin, and Shaun's capable hands. Have a great week.
See you, Tyler.
See you, Tyler.
Okay, now we can talk about him.
He's great. He's my neighbor, waving at him from my window. Yeah. Anyway, it is too bad I get to run because I think my follow-up, but I think it is pretty clear that this really was sort of a placeholder meeting for the actual meeting. We have an ag policy framework renewal, relaunch deadline coming up here. It is, not only do we have the immediacy of all the trade barriers and trade nonsense and, existential dread, we also have sort of what those programs look like going forward is on the docket here. So there are important things in front of these ministers that do need addressed. So I hope that maybe they add some time to the September meeting because it's an important one.
Well, and Minister MacDonald, the federal minister, has a list of things he needs to propose to the Prime Minister for cuts in fall as well. And budget apparently coming from the government as well in fall. And so that is one. I had that conversation with a few people this week, how this summer we're the middle of July and meeting season hasn't slowed down. And it does feel like there's more work. Sure, the ag ministers maybe don't have that high level of ambition at the FPT meeting, but there is a lot of groundwork being done this summer, more than normal. This would normally be a holiday season. Politicians are in parades and flipping pancakes, or trying their best to, and not necessarily, maybe it's the bureaucrats that are doing a lot of the work right now too, but there's a lot of work. Either it's because of the delayed election or the late federal election and kind of government needing to take shape. And then also we have the Trump threat and the Canada-U.S. trade situation that is requiring a lot of resources. And we have Parliament with a new government, well, sort of a new government, the Carney government brand of it, really hitting the ground in September with a new budget. So there's a lot of work going into behind the scenes, kind of the groundwork for changes in policy that we could potentially take. The question, though, is how much runway is there to have these discussions? Yeah. And this is something that came out of that CFA meeting this week, too, where there's all this appetite for changing the status quo. We got to do something new.
There's not. There's not an appetite for change.
Well, there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of talk. We got to make big changes. We need to have nation-building projects. Agriculture, energy are back in the spotlight as resource sectors contributing to the Canadian economy and growth of the Canadian economy in the future. And there's a lot of talk about it. Once you get to the point where you need consensus and action items coming out of it, that's where, whether you're talking about the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, the FTP Ag ministers, the Carney government, the new budget that we're expecting in fall now, that's where the rubber hits the road and where disagreement kind of sets in, I think, again.
There is an ambition to give off the perception that we have an appetite for change.
Yeah. But how long can that last, though, before there isn't actually appetite for change?
That's where I'm kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stakeholders that I saw it in some of the conversations at the Stampede. Like, it's communication on the surface of like change and cooperation, and we're going to do these things, and this is the time is now. And then you start to hear about, but there's this and there's that, and then we couldn't do this, and like, oh, that would offend that person. So like I'm kind of skeptical, because I think this is traditionally what we as a country have been very good at. Is this part of it? Is we've just hyped up the velocity of the talking and the amount of the talking that's going on. But I'm kind of in the show me phase. I want to see some actual things happen. That's the part that is really still escapes us.
Again, that's what takes real leadership to convince people that this is the way to go and take people with on that.
Well, look at interprovincial trade. We're not serious about actually dropping interprovincial barriers. We're serious about talking and giving off the perception that we're doing something about it, not actually doing anything about it.
But as I mentioned, I think I mentioned it last week, we saw Chrystia Freeland join the media again and say that the feds handled it. So now it's totally up to the provinces, everybody. Just sort it out, and it's all your fault if nothing happens.
Punting the football.
Yeah, exactly. So I
wonder
guess
if we see speaking of Minister Freeland, cabinet shuffle in fall is also a thing that's circling.
It's also possible. I guess to that point, that is one of the things I think that I will be watching for, because we have seen and we do hear from those within Ottawa and within the public service, et cetera, that they're at least outwardly from Carney's leadership seems to be exactly this, like, bring me your budget cuts, bring me where you're going to save your money. Like, there seems to be at least the outline of what could be changed and what could actually push forward. But really it will come down to Shaun, to your point about, okay, so show me, is how sustained that is and what that actually translates to once, sort of everything comes back in, when the House is back in September, et cetera. But I will say, I sort of do agree. And the pace at which we have been working this summer, it does feel like a lot more is still happening. There has not been, and I know August is coming, but there hasn't been like that real lull in like news or announcements or, stories or whatever. Like, we have been running here, guys, and it's not slowing down.
Well, I'll give you an example. Like I was lobbied from both sides of the equation. Like, what is AFC's position on plant breeding going forward and the funding of that? I heard from both sides. At Ag in Motion this week, believe me, I heard from both sides of that one. That's something like, hey, rubber needs to hit the road and provide some clarity, and let's move on. But that's just one of many things that need to be sorted out, in particular some of these budget cuts.
So with decisions like that one, for example, do we see a flurry of them where kind of one domino breaks and a whole bunch of tough decisions that have been kicked down the road are made at the same time? I could see a situation like that unfolding where we kind of, like, from a political communication strategy as well, you can kind of bury some of those announcements of whether you're cutting staff or cutting programs or cutting things like that. It could all come at once, and I'm wondering whether the federal budget is maybe that event.
Possibly.
And if it doesn't come all at once, it lessens the chance that much changes, because depending on what you lead with, you get a reaction. It's like, oh, I don't know that this.
Maybe we should start.
We got to slow down here.
Yeah. So it could. You're right, Kelvin. It could very much sort of be like a Band-Aid.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, and maybe it has to happen all at once. So it's either, and maybe by that same token, then it's all or nothing kind of thing, right? Like, either we do
maybe not rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe it's amputate the limb. That kind of thing.
Well, it's probably more like that.
So this is a really good question. It really, so I would actually feel more encouraged and take Prime Minister Carney's, push for change. I would take it more seriously if it was like all at once, like, let's go. We don't have time to debate any of this stuff anymore. You guys have been debating this forever. We're doing it. We're moving forward in whatever that path is on a number of different fronts. That would actually be kind of refreshing. And I'm sure it doesn't all have to be things that I agree with, but I actually would find that a little bit refreshing. Let's break some shit. Like that actually maybe be more of the attitude.
You're going to have to edit that out.
We're in the bonus. We can do it.
We're in the bonus. We can do what we want. Well, and maybe, and I think we use this within the RealAg team, break something well, right? Like sometimes things need to be broken.
Oh, but then you're giving ammo though to the people that want to drag stuff out.
No. I'm saying like not all of this has to be negative. Like that's what I'm saying is that if you're going to break everything, like if you're going to amputate the limb, if you're going to do it all at once, whatever, like I don't think that has to be entirely negative. Like some of this is going to be controversial, but maybe to the benefit, right? Like, and I mean, maybe to the benefit of the industry, not just the budget. Like we're talking about several different things here, right? We do know that there are going to be cuts, that there are going to be, and maybe it's staff and maybe it's programs, maybe it's whatever, but we're also talking about like a fundamental change to some of our policy or, these sorts of things. Like some of this change might just have to happen, and it's not in the long term going to be a bad thing, potentially. Like there could be, like there's a mix of stuff here that really could happen. Like
let's fail fast. Let's fail
fast so that, again, I think I said this a few weeks ago on the show, you can change something and then you can change it again. You don't have to be married to like the change and then be like, that is forever how it shall be. You can change things and then be like, wasn't quite right, and do it again and do it again. We do it all the time. So let's do that.
Kelvin, what did we not talk about?
Oh man, I didn't have that list ready.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about
what did we
AI.
not talk about?
We're going to.
Oh, okay.
But I just
I'm not sure what else is on the
covered
list
it
here.
all.
One thing I talked to Renee Roy about in that interview as well, not just joining Canadian Federation of Agriculture, but the Canadian Pork Council also hosted a meeting in Ontario last week with national pork producers from the U.S. and the Mexican group as well, and they had a trilateral meeting where, again, except for on some of the trade stuff, all on the same page when it comes to dealing with African swine fever or screwworm. I hadn't thought of screwworm being an issue for the pork industry as well. They talked about that at that meeting. Renee talks about some of the things that country of origin labeling is still a concern, and of course the August 1st tariff deadline, whether pork remains CUSMA compliant pork, and of course live animals going south as well, with all those barns down in Iowa and places like that filled with Canadian weanlings.
NPPC and Canadian Pork Council don't get along. They don't agree on trade. Is that, or did you?
No, they do. No, sorry, they do. Never mind. Yeah, I maybe shouldn't have said it that way. They certainly agree on trade and integration of the market, and just right now the U.S. administration is putting pressure on, of course, bringing production back into the U.S. and not having those integrated supply chains.
Yep. Okay, I gotcha. Lyndsey, what did we miss?
Well, two things of note. Maizex is launching a canola line for Western Canada. That went out this week, so I thought that was pretty cool. And also very cool, DJI Agriculture. So these are the drones. These are the most common ag drones out there. So DJI announced 3 new models, but this is a Chinese company. So super exciting. They're bigger payloads, lots of automation.
Spray drones too, right? These are spray drones.
Yes, they're built for spray, for agriculture. And that's great, and that's cool, and it's super neat. But the question still remains, it made me realize, did we get the final word on if the U.S. is going to allow these or not, or if they're going to kick them all out, etc.? So I went looking. So far, apparently, that is still the threat, that they will not be allowed in, but it's not entirely finalized. And then, of course, in Canada, we, as of yet, have no pesticide application approved by drones. So you can put on fertilizer, you can put on seed, those sorts of things, but we don't have the pesticide licenses, label recommendations yet or approvals. So interesting, and they look really cool, and definitely seeing this, technology advance. But the future of these drones in North America may be a bit of a question based on those sorts of things.
One of the stories we didn't get to that I wanted to was some sort of negotiation or discussion between President Trump and Coca-Cola, where President Trump had said that Coca-Cola was going to move away from high fructose corn syrup and use cane sugar, which would create I guess a bit of a spark to the sugarcane acre in states like Louisiana for sure. I've been asking the question, why not sugar beets?
Right.
There's states like Idaho, Minnesota, where there's a lot of sugar beet. There could be a real expansion to the sugar beet acre. Now, one of the issues there is they're GM for pretty much. So that's probably a problem for some people. But
so I'm no biologist here, but what's the difference between a sugar molecule in our body if it comes from high fructose corn syrup versus sugar cane?
Well, I think the enemy is just not the enemy for me. I'll make that very clear. I don't want anybody touching my Dr. Pepper. But I think it's just high fructose corn syrup is the enemy, right? Not necessarily cane sugar being the friend.
So it sounds
I don't know
better,
the differences, but
so it must be better. That's what we're making.
The chemistry at the sugar molecule level, I'm not sure. Is it different?
Fructose.
Well, GM versus non-GM, I think, is one of the big factors here. I think it should really create a lot of concern for the groups that are fighting the seed oil battle. Now Coke has not necessarily confirmed that this conversation happened, so like that this all may be for naught. But I think there should be some concern in the seed oil sector from, say, American Soybean Association, the Canadian canola growers, any of these groups that are in the seed oils. I think this should be some cause for concern that that this is a little bit of a weakening of the wall, so to speak. And that next MAHA report comes out August 12th. And NCGA and others will be pushing back hard. So there's that.
We'll see if it comes out or if it gets kicked down the road as well.
Well, they already put out one report, so I don't know. I think this one comes out. You don't think it will come out?
I haven't followed it that closely, but there's just a tendency here to delay deadlines and water things down and hang on. The real one is coming next. This is just a test trial kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm with you if they hadn't released any reports yet, but they already put out report number 1, so we'll see. Well, time will definitely tell on that front. Okay, so one of the bonus questions I wanted to ask you about has to do with, so with all the buzz around AI and automation in agriculture, I heard a lot about it this week at Ag in Motion. Okay, now we're talking about like autonomous tractors and like, some sort of like, AI chatbot to give you recommendations on agronomy and all that kind of stuff. There's a few of those that are out there. Just imagine handing over the reins completely for like a week, 7 days on your farm to AI. How might that unfold? Would that be, Lyndsey, do you think that would be tragic, or would it be like, man, doing a pretty good job running this thing? I may have to take a bit of maybe a back step here.
No, there'd be so many dead sheep, it wouldn't even be funny. So no. However, when I think about this is something actually that for the past couple of years, there's been several instances, and I'm probably not alone. I'm sure most farmers in a day do a task that they're like, this does not need to be me doing this, or I could easily offload this, or maybe it's just something you really don't like doing. So some of the things that would be great to be able to offload that I think might even be possible would be potentially things like, we have been dealing with fly strike this season. It's awful. It is hard to detect. You could probably have some sort of detection, but that would be like, I don't know how, but I'm sure that you could try. One of the things we just brought in a fencing solution this week from the UK. I long before this had this idea of automating at least perimeter fencing for rotational grazing. You could probably figure that out. I mean, if we've got e-collars that create, fences, we can probably make physical fences automated. But things like, like what if one sheep is out? Finding said sheep, bringing said sheep back in.
Or like an angry bull.
Right? Exactly. Like, I just don't see what product or thing is going to bring in exactly that, a rogue bull or something like that. So, so there's aspects like, I think about, like, we have to make hay this week. Like, sure, that we have autonomous tractors. You could probably from a drone, maybe you could even test if moisture ready. Like there's all sorts of ways I can see the AI and or tech integrating into some of the things we do. But there are just certain aspects that I think it'd be a disaster, especially when you look at what some of AI spits out right now, currently, as far as like generative AI. Some of it is amazing and some of it is like, oh no.
Yeah. So, AI influencer at Wimbledon that everyone thought was real and was like getting like 50,000 likes every Instagram post. And it was just an AI generated image.
Yeah. But imagine that being an AI farmer influencer, how many of our audience would right away pick out, hang on, that's supposed to be canola, but those leaves don't look like canola.
That's not right.
Well, I think it depends on who's making the image. I saw a couple yesterday where it's like, so I looked at it, it was for an advertisement.
But you've got an expert who is telling the AI what to do there. It's not AI. Like that's where, to me, there's still a human. AI is still a supplement. It's still a tool, not 100. In this example where we're talking about an AI running a farm for 7 days, 100%. That's where I think things go off the rails real quickly because AI is a tool for reducing work by 30-40% at this time, not 100%.
Yeah,
we'd know our numbers.
Yeah.
What do you mean we'd know our numbers?
Like.
The AI robot would have a better idea what the numbers are saying on the farm.
Yeah, but when something goes wrong, those numbers would add up very quickly too. That's the thing where human expertise is still not matched by AI in terms of seeing when things are going off the rails for those checks and balances. When we talk about AI running the farm, I think those scenarios and some of this we already see when it comes to automation in agriculture, the tractor that goes off the end of the field because the human fell asleep kind of thing. I think AI there's going to be all kinds of stories of that as AI and automation takes over for humans in more places.
Well, and so often some of these things rely on exactly that, some sort of signal, right? I don't have a good signal in like huge portions of my farm, and I'm in Ottawa City limits.
What is going on over there? The heat is insufferable. You have no signal, even though you can throw a rock at the apartment buildings from your like. What's going on?
Goodness, I wish I could.
That's another story we missed this week, though, too.
Yeah,
Rogers.
Oh yeah,
Rogers rolled out satellite to cell data service or at least texting service this week to remote parts of Canada using the Starlink low Earth orbit satellites. So so poor reception in remote areas might become certainly not up to like fiber speed, Wi-Fi on fiber, but it's
it's still an issue, like for sure.
Yeah. I talked to a few farmers this week that have the Starlink on the tractor, like they've fully decked it out.
Mm-hmm. But even that is not like Kelvin has Starlink. It's not perfect by any stretch.
But
it's way
massively better than what we had before.
Yes. Yeah.
Think about how much smoother I could talk on the radio if my internet was good.
I'm using that from now on when I stutter and
So we got to get it on the record. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The All-Star break happened.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, home run derby, All-Star break. This is Kelvin Heppner's chance to redeem himself.
Now.
What is your outlook for the Toronto Blue Jays season here for the rest of the way out?
Well, it's better than it was at the start of the year when you exaggerate how poor my outlook was. But
there were tears, everybody. Tears.
Yeah, I'd say they're in good shape. They should make the playoffs this year.
If they don't make the playoffs now, that's going to be a real disappointment. And then he's going to come back and be like, I told you the season was over.
So, Shaun, you're saying they're going all the way. They're going
what are you
World
saying?
Series.
They're like
I think they're going to win a round. I think they're going to go to the they're going to go to the ALCS.
Okay.
They could be the most aggressive at the trade deadline, I think, of any of the teams. Curious to see what they do in that regard. I like the draft that they had too on Sunday. That was good. I think they're going to make the ALCS, and I think there's an opportunity to. They need to deal with some of the pitching. That's, I think, maybe that those top one or two starter areas is where they got some work to do. So that's my guess. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. The manager had an epic. Going into the All-Star break, did you talk? I'm not sure if you've talked about this on the show at all, Shaun, but John Schneider's epic meltdown ejection on a foul ball against the A's. quite the ejection.
Love it. Nobody gets ejected like a baseball manager.
That's
like,
true.
no.
I'll give you that.
Right? Like
hockey coaches used to try to, but not. It's still baseball managers carry that now.
They do.
It's pretty
and some managers have, or sorry, some umpires have way too short of a leash. Way too short.
Yeah.
The College World Series, there was an epic.
Here at our place, with the girls, I try to get them to watch hey, great, let's watch highlights of baseball, the best plays, like where we can like maybe learn something about positioning or that kind of thing. No, let's watch the biggest baseball manager ejections. Those are the YouTube highlights.
They have great taste.
Good.
Yeah. Great behavioral examples as well.
Yeah. Well, everybody, we are super excited about the announcement we made today with CAPI, and really, I think it's some great stuff is going to come out of that. Awesome. There's a lot of different ag policy topics that need to be discussed at a heightened level and a more volume, more perspectives. And we'll try to bring all of that to you through this agreement that we have with CAPI. And like I said before, you can find all of it at RealAgriculture.com. Hey, Lyndsey, have yourself a great weekend.
You as well.
Kelvin, all the best to you.
Thank you. Go Jays.
Go Jays. Well, he's back on the wagon, everybody. He's back on the bandwagon. Hey, if you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. And big shout out and thank you to everybody that stopped and said hello at Ag in Motion this week. It was great to chat with so many people in the Real Agriculture audience. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.